Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Here I have with me distinguished Toastmaster Dwayne Wynick in here in D50. And we're just catching up, two guys chatting. And during this coronavirus quarantine issue, we're all cooped up. And now we want to flex our muscle just a little bit. Now, I know some of our clubs has been struggling a little bit in getting online. But I think pretty much most clubs have gotten over that hump and say, you know what? Actually, it's not as bad as it seems. It is different. It is a different platform. It's a different experience. But we're also learning how to speak online, maybe looking at the camera, those little things. Now that we can become more comfortable and able to run our regular meeting week by week online, I've heard some of the questions from other Toastmasters is that, can I still grow my club? Right? Can I still invite people? How do I do that? How do I go about doing that? So Dwayne, glad to have you here. Would love to pick your brain on this issue.
Excellent. Thanks for inviting me, Roger.
Now, tell us, how long have you been Toastmaster and what clubs are you involved in right now?
So I started my Toastmaster journey November 1st, 2016. So 3.5 years, 4 years this new November. I'm a member of a number of clubs, but my two primary clubs are a community club here in Tyler. So I live deep in Eastern, yay Eastern, and my corporate club back at McAfee in Plano. So those are my two primary clubs. And then there's an advanced club that also meets at the McAfee facility pre-COVID. And then another advanced club that we started about a year ago here in Tyler. So those are my four primary clubs that I spend the bulk of my time with.
So you have had experience both from a community club standpoint and corporate club, from a regular club to an advanced club with various different specialties. So you've had some experience with a number of clubs. So let's say you are our VP of membership. You are our VP of PR. How do I go about, instead of pulling out my hair and saying, what do I do with this? How do I go about still trying to expand our club in this kind of environment?
It's funny you asked that question because I am the VP of membership in one of them and VP of PR in the other. So it's definitely inappropriate.
That's right.
To ask.
It's pop quiz for you.
Thank you. Nothing like an elongated impromptu speech, right? Now there's no playbook for COVID. We didn't see it coming. Had our plans in place to operate our clubs and produce and recruit our membership our traditional ways, and then COVID hit and all the rules were thrown out of the window. The first thing we had to do was move to an electronic platform, and 3 of my 4 clubs use Zoom and one of them uses WebEx. And what we found is that the platform itself was probably less interesting than it was the adoption to any platform. I think at the end of the day, change is what most humans tend to fear. And so embracing something different, we kind of saw that when Pathways was rolled out. People held on, they clutched their manuals for dear life. And it's just what you would expect human beings to do. And I would say moving to the online format is very similar in its impact. People kind of hesitated in the beginning. I don't know if I'm going to like it. I'm going to miss being in the same room with the same people. But as Toastmasters, we do tend to adapt. And adapt is what I've seen all of our clubs do, at least the ones that I've been involved in.
Excellent. So what would be, if I'm going to get started with my club and just, okay, now that I've gotten online, the weekly meeting seems to be holding up. We're doing fine. Our members, existing members are joining and giving speeches online, impromptu evaluations.
Yep.
What would be the second thing that you would recommend me to do in terms of expanding our club, reaching out to non-members?
Well, of those 4 clubs, 2 of them actually had increased membership this year despite this change in format. Okay. And I would say in both situations, one's a corporate club, one's a community club, and in both situations, it's the benefit of having a captive audience. So you said it at the top of the call, where we've been locked in our homes for weeks now, and this is kind of our new norm for some undetermined period of time. Well, that captivity has created opportunity with some people. As example, our local community club here in Tyler Evening Toastmasters, has grown membership mostly from people reaching out. And as I've interviewed them after they've joined and said, why now? Why did you look for this outlet or this experience? And what I've found is a common thread of folks being captive, locked in their offices or in their home offices for extended periods of time. They're not only making investments in self-improvement in various ways. Some people are reading more books. Some people are taking online classes, whatever it might be. But they're looking for, especially in a couple of circumstances, they're looking for adult conversation time. Many of these folks are still have their job, and they are also a wife or a father, and they're having to become a homeschool teacher and all of these things that weren't in their plans. And they're trying to carve out moments in their schedule where they can dedicate it to their own self-improvement and dedicate it to where they can have maybe a conversation with someone other than a 7-year-old. So we saw that as an opportunity. And anytime we've had those folks show up and want to experience what is it like to be in Toastmasters. Remember, some of the newer members don't know what it's like to go into a room and see a meeting in traditional format. So again, I hate to use similarities with pathways, but the human reaction to either be against or for something is very similar in both cases.
I see. So for example, so the two things that you've highlighted from speaking to those new members joining in was one is social connection, connecting
Absolutely.
back
Yep.
to somebody in their own peers, and number two, self-improvement, taking advantage of the opportunity
Absolutely.
of doing it. Maybe they're a little bit slow down at work, or maybe because they are becoming more comfortable being online, and they might want to expand their capability in terms of leadership and public speaking. And that for a lot of these folks who are coming in, they may have no Toastmasters experience whatsoever, so that there's nothing to compare. So this is the norm for now.
Absolutely. It'll be strange for them once COVID lifts and we actually meet in person again to actually get in their car, drive across town, walk into a room, and actually meet these people in person they've been hanging out with.
Well, I'll come back to this point because I want to pick your brain just a little bit in terms of your, putting on your guru hat and predict what would happen down the road. But we'll come back.
Hopefully we don't scare them off. That's our goal.
So besides one-on-one, us reaching out to our own friends, our coworkers, and say, hey, we've got this thing going on. You might want to enjoy it. Come and check it out. What else can we do to expand the possibility of our membership?
Now, it's a great question. I'll tell you, one of the things we did for the McAfee environment is we became very opportunistic. So we watched the company react to this new world order, if you will. And my organization has been home office based from the beginning. So when I would get in the car and drive to Plano, as an example, to go hang out in our office, it was part social, but it was also the fact that we had so many people working in an office environment. At the point that everyone had stay-at-home orders and everyone was basically relegated to their homes, there was none of that happening. And the company realized, especially since we're a global company, that we needed to offer things to our employees to make sure that they had a balance in their life. And that's where a lot of the encouragement to maybe take an online class or, work out on Zoom or do things differently to not be stuck in your desk doing your job 24 hours a day, because that doesn't help. People will burn out much quicker. So we saw this appetite at the company level to want to find out what was going on out there that our employees would be interested in understanding more about, which led us to a series. We're going to do a boot camp series within McAfee for general employees. So think of it as almost if you were doing it in the traditional Toastmasters way, maybe you would do a speechcraft, for a series of meetings to just generate interest outside. Well, we're taking the fact that we're sort of stuck online with each other and adapting sort of that format to a weekly boot camp for the month of May. So every Wednesday afternoon at 2:00, employees are invited, and it's being pitched beyond just our membership. So the entire corporate world is invited to participate. And basically to use some of the hooks that we use to recruit members in the normal world, where if you're afraid of public speaking, or if you've just been promoted and now you're freaking out a little bit because maybe you're outside of your comfort zone, here's a place where we can help you. We're marketing it to leaders of teams where if you've got people on your team and you sit on online calls and you just cringe every time you see a certain person show up, if that person reports to you, maybe you could nudge them over our way and have them come hang out with us 1 hour a week for 4 weeks during the month of May and see if they can't connect with a better way to improve how they do what they do. So that's one thing that we're doing.
Well, you used the word opportunistic there, and I just wrote down a bunch of tactics, related to that in a sense. So let me hear you correctly first, is that using McAfee as an example, and I'm sure it's happening in other many companies,
Yep.
is that suddenly a lot of the in-office staff are forced to work online now in their homes, and that it's not so much just them and the computer. Now, how do we relate to one another? How do we lead my team and so on and so forth? And it becomes a scramble for a lot of companies. So you guys saw it as an opportunity for you to put a foot in there. And also in the program, the boot camp that you mentioned, is that it's not just to say, hey, here we are. You're taking one more step of leadership to providing something and say, whether it is officially a speechcraft or turning or nudging, and package it something that would fit your platform and your company. In your case, you say, hey, it's a 4-week, once a week kind of boot camp that the attendees can learn a few things. And by the way, yeah, if you like, you can also join us on a weekly basis over here at Toastmaster. And taking those opportunity, I could imagine that another company, somebody who in their own company, they can hear some email messages coming out that they can respond and say, hey, we've got something here. Or it could be some local Facebook groups that somebody's complaining about how they're all cooped up. And hey, here's another opportunity to say, hey, what about this in this hour? Or there are homeschoolers or any kind of associations where keeping our ears perked up and listening for those opportunities to extend a hand out and say, why don't you just come in and check us out? And in your situation, not only in that invitation, you guys created a project, created this boot camp to offer value to your company.
Absolutely. We saw it as the door had cracked open because the company showed that they had an appetite to want to create, not so much create content, but react to the circumstance that everyone's going through. We're a global company and everyone's working from home, even people in organizations that would have never dreamed that, I'm lucky I've got a home office environment. Some people, when I see them online, they're sitting in their living room, or one guy that's one of my favorite members of our club, sitting in this closet with a curtain behind him, and that's his private space. But that's what he and his family have worked out is, when daddy's in here, don't bother me.
Yeah, that's right.
We all adapt with the rules that we have, right? The circumstances.
That's right. We've all seen that famous CNN video.
Absolutely.
With the baby in the back.
Yes. And here's the good news is that it's maybe some people see online as less than optimal. We've gotten to know each other by becoming Toastmasters and sharing our stories with each other. Well, now that we're forced to be at our homes online, we really have gotten to know each other. We've gotten to know the kids that come popping into screen from time to time, and the cats that come crawling across the keyboard and everything else. And instead of letting that, quote, disrupt the flow, we bring that in and embrace that. Even on business calls, which are much similar to what you and I are having right now, when we're disrupted, when a child comes in, they're not scolded for it. They're kind of brought into the conversation and introduced as part of the family. So it does allow for an extension of what was sort of a natural thing that we've always done.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think it's the same tool as how you're going to use it, right?
Absolutely.
So it could be a tool that really absolutely just found us in a little corner and says, this is it. I'm just struggling through. I'm just doing the bare minimum. Versus here's another tool, not necessarily replacing anything, but it's augmenting what we have. And in fact, what you just shared is that there are some things that we've never dreamed of before, right? Let's say 2 years ago, a year ago, if my kid run around in the back, I might be scolding him, right? And just say, you get out of here. And you just ruined my $1 million call with my client. Today, we'll be, hey, come on in. Let me show you. Let me show Uncle Dwight over here.
That's right. Well, I'm sure you've noticed this on the professional side as well. Because everything's moved online and our conversations are just like the one you and I are having right now, we're getting to practice and learn best practices as part of our Toastmasters experience now that are helping us either lead calls, drive calls, or participate in calls in our day jobs. And we're becoming better at that. And that was not why I joined Toastmasters. It's an unintended byproduct of the circumstance of events that we've all had to participate in the last few weeks.
Yes, certainly. And I think there's, coming back to a Toastmasters meeting, I'll give one example where we could have in the past in a brick and mortar in-person situation, we just kind of take it for granted that there's such and such time we'll show up and I see you, we say hello, and gavel down and the meeting starts. Right. Being online, if you have 25 people staring at each other and complete silence, guess what? There's no excitement. There is nothing that you can do to try to create a meeting. So in a sense, we're going back to the idea of every meeting is an event.
Absolutely.
And that it is an event. And we have to have a pre-event as you're getting people connected, acclimated, maybe even doing technical stuff, but bantering back and forth and creating the environment that, hey, we are going to have an event and here it is. Absolutely. So I think to some degree, we've all becoming like party planners.
No, that's a good way to put it. I've got a notebook that I use that's here on my desk. And what's interesting is on one side, I take notes. So I'm during my business meetings and calls that I have, someone will give me to-dos or action items or whatnot. And this is where I jot things down just so that I can remember that I've committed to certain things. But on the other side, I'll flip it over because every once in a while, let's say in a business meeting, someone will ask a question and I'll think, wow, that would make a great table topics question. And I'll write it down so I won't forget it. You just never know when you're going to use the things that you're learning on one side for the other and vice versa.
That's right. That's right.
It ties back to your point of being opportunistic. Just be opportunistic in every approach, whether it's your approach to find new members, your approach to enhance a meeting, your approach to do things differently, or to improve upon how you do your day job. All of it's connected.
Yeah, great. Well, you talked about being recognizing the current situation where potential prospects are, could be captive audience because of the social distancing, disconnection. There's that need, the idea of taking advantage of the opportunity to self-improve. Then you talked about being opportunistic, keeping our ears perked up for chances to share our knowledge and expertise and reaching out to allow people to come and check us out. What other tips can you give us to potentially expand our membership?
I think the biggest thing that we've had to change is maybe how we track leads. So there are leads that come in through the website and people will either find us because of Find a Club or they'll be introduced by people that know people. So you have that traditional way. In the normal meetings, you'd have your physical guest book and you would force people to sign that. And then it would be someone's job on the executive committee to do the follow-up with that particular person. Here, because things are less documented, if you will, you've got to sort of change your internal processes and get together as an executive team, if you haven't done this already, and talk through who's going to own what piece of this. Because, there's various ways that you're going to find leads or people are going to come in and visit your meetings. We've had a really high conversion rate in both types of clubs, in both of my clubs, because it just seems like you don't have to, who's got the book? And it's all just happening real time. So if you've divided up the tasks between the executive team and everyone clearly knows their role, then it's real easy after the meeting, before the meeting, confirming with the quasi-visitor that they're coming and making sure they have the Zoom information. And as importantly, if you see them show up, make sure they're welcomed into the meeting. You had the pre-meeting in the traditional room setting Toastmasters environment where you would have time to socialize, and it's no different online. Making sure you're not overlooking the names you don't recognize.
I'm going to put you on the spot, right? I'm going to put you on the spot. So right now we are in a Toastmasters meeting, one of your local clubs, let's say Tyler Evening Club, and I just show up. So you don't know me. I didn't sign up for anything. You didn't get my email. You didn't get anything. I just ding dong. Here I am. I'm showing up as one person in your meeting. And I've sat through and gone through the meeting. How would you go about just right off the bat and say, you're going to create this process of bringing me along? What would you do? What are 3 or 4 things that you would do?
Well, first off, you would not have sat through the meeting and not already been addressed. So in the pre-meeting, unless you came in late, you would have already been called out by someone. So whoever saw you first on the executive committee would have reached out and said, Roger, hey, welcome to the club. Glad that you decided to visit us today. Tell me a little bit about why you're here. Did someone suggest it? Did you just find us on Facebook? What was the source? And part of that is just the normal discovery that we go through anyway, because we're curious. We want to know what methods are working and which ones aren't. We had a visitor this last Monday night, and we knew he was coming because one of our officers actually invited him. So when he popped up, and you knew he was going to fit in just right ahead, because instead of just having his name typed out in his window, what was his name? Big Ernie. So he had Big Ernie, and he's been known as Big Ernie for the last 40 years of his adult life. And you could tell that coming right in without even hearing a word from him, here's a guy with personality, because he's calling himself Big Ernie. And
so you mean if I show up in your meeting as Mr. Roger C. Fung, that's not going to come across too well, huh?
No, it's going to come across quite well. In fact, what we'll do is we'll play with that. One of the things that you know me well enough to know that I'm pretty good at situational humor to take advantage of things that are happening real time. And I would immediately latch on that, and then we would all embrace that as something that you offered us as a gift, if you will. So that's how we would embrace you. You would likely be called on during table topics, and if you refused, we would acquiesce and allow you to not answer. But that's also how you test how quickly someone is willing to engage with this. For every outgoing type A personality that shows up, you also have examples of people who tell you in their first icebreaker that they drove around the parking lot for the first 4 weeks before they got up the nerve to walk in the first time. One of my favorite members of this club was that person, and he shared that in his icebreaker. And you could tell, I remember the first day he walked in, he shook your hand, but he wouldn't make eye contact because he was just that uncomfortable being outside of his comfort zone. Well, now he's one of the funniest speakers we have in the club, and it's just fun to watch that personal growth.
Excellent. So I heard that first and foremost, you guys have keeping your eyes open for anyone new one coming in, and you acknowledge them by asking them questions about how they found you, so on and so forth. Then throughout the meeting, you are inviting this person to get engaged in some way, whether it be table topic questions, or bantering back and forth, so that you, in that process, in some sense, you're also qualifying or getting to know the person, what kind of style they have, and you get an image, kind of an idea of who this person is. All right, so the meeting is over. What would happen next?
Well, I would definitely make sure that you would be asked at some point at the end what your experience was like. What your expectations were coming into it. No different than we would do it in the traditional sense if you were in the room. You'd be asked for your opinion of the meeting, and it's also, as you pointed out, a great way to get a sense of to what degree did they connect with that experience. Like you said, every meeting is an event. Did they connect with this event? You can usually tell by their willingness to engage and kind of to what degree they just go all in, if you will, and lean into the opportunity for them. And some people are a little more shy, and you have to draw that out of them. The fact that they'll tell you anything at least tells you they're willing to give what they can. But watching these folks grow, even when they come in like Big Ernie did, at the end of the call, at the end of the meeting, he was asked what he thought. And he goes, man, you guys are great. Where do I sign? Okay, skip to the end. And that was the cue for the VP of membership to get the application in his hand. And I know that he got the application within 30 minutes after the meeting was over with. And I expect him to be a paid member by next Monday. So sometimes it can go that quickly.
Great. Dwight, you kind of distill a myth behind my, in the back of my mind that, hey, now that we're online, does that mean that all of a sudden all of the practices have to be completely different? We have to reinvent everything. I'm never on Facebook, so now I have to go on and get an account. Our club don't have a YouTube account, doesn't have Instagram, doesn't have Twitter. I have to start all of these things just to try to reach out to people. And what you just told me is, well, those tools can be useful, but they're not necessary.
Nope.
And it's to just logically think through what would happen at each step, where we can personally invite folks from the circles that we already have, or being opportunistic, listening for new possibility from work, from neighbors, from people that we know, or from church, and inviting them in. And once they come in, helping them really experience that Toastmaster experience of a meeting, and engaging them, allowing them to be connected to some degree. And sometime, if not all of the time, they might even sell themselves and say, hey, where's the app, right?
Absolutely.
Let me, where's the application? Let me sign up. So while there may be some nudges and changes in terms of who's going to send email, who's going to contact this person or that person, that may be some rearrangement. However, just logically think through what a prospective member coming in, a new visitor come in, what would he or she go through? Then you have a plan of attack, and you continue to invite people in and giving them that event each and every week, and they're learning and growing, not just in public speaking, but connecting with other people, self-improvement, social connection. We will be able to continue to add members into our club. Is that
Absolutely.
A good summary of what you just said?
It's a great way to frame everything we've just discussed. I mean, if you think about in a traditional club, the healthy clubs, the biggest reason why membership is up is usually club culture. People will come in, they'll connect. Maybe they won't connect with the whole group, but they connect with a few people, and then it grows because we are a family. It can be dysfunctional at times, but it's still a family. And that culture that existed in the room also exists online. You know, maybe it took a meeting or two for people to work out the kinks and realize, oh, my camera sucks, or I've got to call in versus using my bandwidth for audio, whatever the technical glitches might have been to work through that. But after the first couple of meetings, that culture that made that club special in person exists online. Yeah, it's a little bit different, but the culture is exactly the same. The class clown is still the funny person, and the real serious anal retentive control freak is still that person online. You just can't, you know, pop them in the head when they go outside the lines too far.
We just have to invent some emoji to take care of that.
Exactly.
Let's draw this to a close. Thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
Let's close with this question, and let's have a little bit fun with this.
Uh-oh.
The table topic, right?
Uh-oh, look out.
Since moving from an in-person meeting and now completely online, what would be the biggest plus that you have experienced, and what's one of the biggest negative that, or something that's kind of doesn't sit right for you?
Great question. I'd say the biggest plus, I'm going to be selfish for a small second, is I don't have to get in my car and drive across town or go all the way to Plano and schedule a whole bunch of meetings around the fact that I have to drive 2 hours and all of the logistics around that. You know, I can wear my jammies waist down and roll up here 5 minutes before and be ready to go and have, you know, just as much of an experience without having to go through all the trouble to logistically be at a meeting. So that's been the one probably the biggest perk that I didn't see coming.
I will make sure that we'll let every club officers know that please warn all of the attendees never to stand up. Keep sitting, because that's all we want to see.
Yeah. If you invite me to your meeting,
what would be one thing is not quite there. I wish we could be better.
I think the biggest thing is the physical interaction with people. You know, many of us are you know, we're huggers and handshakers and all of those things that are just part of who we are. And I think you miss that. You know, we've had open houses where we've actually had my Tyler Evening Club here in my home where we've served dinner and had our meeting, and that physical social aspect of it is something you can't replicate online. You know, my advanced club here in town meets monthly, and it's always with dinner being served. So we break bread and have a meal and then have a meeting. And that's just the culture that the club has created, obviously without sending, you know, food to everyone's house in advance. You kind of have to eat on your own. So that part of it, the physical social part of it is missing, but it doesn't make it less. It just makes it different.
Sure. You know, as you were talking, it just gave me an idea that maybe once all the quarantine limitations is off, maybe we can coordinate an evening where all of different clubs are about the same time having their own meeting, and then we all pipe into Zoom one account. So we might have 15, 20, 30 clubs all connected, and we're having this one gigantic open house dinner with our members individually.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I mean, there's definitely a merit to being online. We've actually talked about it at McAfee that once the quarantine's lifted, we're going to actually have an executive meeting and decide, do we really want to convert the meeting back to in person, because we really enjoy the online format for that particular club. So I think you're going to see that some clubs have taken advantage of and really like who they are in this new medium and may continue in that medium.
Sure.
Post the world going back to normal, whatever that means, whenever that happens.
Yeah, and then have almost similar to an annual picnic or
absolutely.
You have some special event where you're pulling people back together.
Absolutely.
So that would be a combination, though.
So it's definitely created more options for the long term, for sure.
That's right. So thank you very much, Dwight, for your time, and you certainly have answered a number of my questions in terms of how best my club and the clubs that I know that we can share. Hopefully, the rest of District 50 can pick up a point or two, and that I'm looking forward to all of our clubs growing despite the difficult time. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Roger.